What's that? No, no, I don't know. No, no, Hawkeye. I don't know why you don't get a bigger role in the movies. I really don't. I mean, you're the funny one. I don't know why Iron Man gets all the laughs. I mean, that's really. Oh, hello, hello. Welcome back to Steampunk over Ether. Yes, and we're continuing our theme of making that we've been pursuing this morning, and we've got a couple of great things coming up next. In a short while, we'll be having a TinType run through, really, a virtual TinType experience with Gregg MacNeill of Darkbox Images, where he's going to take you through the whole process of creating a TinType, which is the kind of Victorian photography, the way that Victorians used to create photography. And it's a wonderful video, and it's a truly amazing truly amazing method of making an image. So don't miss that. But first, very excited, very honoured to have the man from the ministry, Major Tinker, John Naylor, who of course is from the Ministry of Steampunk, and along with his other half, Karen Grover, Lady Elsie was responsible for the asylum and putting the asylum together. He's a maker and a prop maker and a presenter in his own right, and he's put together a lovely tutorial for you. So I'm going to show that now.
Hello, today's project is a tutorial, a how to remodel and restyle a child's toy, in this case a Doctor Who Cyberman helmet, and create a steampunk version of it. We recently built a large, 9 feet tall police box which you could walk through to go into the interior, where we had a TARDIS style console, and we were invited to exhibit this at MCM, so we needed more steampunk props to go with it, and we figured we'd do it as a simple tutorial so that you can do things like this at home. Now, I'm not going to do a major remodel on the helmet. It's basically going to be a repaint and some stick-on greeblies and some bits just to change the shape a little bit and make it distinctly steampunk rather than just a Cyberman toy as it stands. The first thing you've got to do is prep. These toys are injection molded, and so the surface is usually covered in a release agent for coming out of the mold. You've got to wash that off. Warm water with a little bit of dish soap is all that's needed. You don't need any fancy degreasers or anything like that, but give it a wash and then let it dry. Make sure it's properly dry. Then to get the paint to key and also any glue that you're using to stick, it's wise to give it a bit of a rough rub down using some abrasive blocks. Now, I'm going to lose this clear area, so it doesn't matter that I'm scratching the plastic up, but just give it all a good rub down all over, not so that you're removing the paint finish, but just to give a roughening to the surface so that paint and glue can key to it. And then we're going to undercoat it, ready to go. Now, before I hit this with the seal and undercoat, I want to add some pieces to it. I'm going to use some greeblies, some laser cut pieces to add some shape and some form and some detail. A lot of greeblies are wood, metal, plastic, and they're not flexible, they won't bend. So where you've got a curve and you want something to shape around the helmet, you need a different material. If you're going for flats, then high density EVA foam is brilliant. It will shape itself to curves, even compound curves if you apply a little bit of heat. And here I want to go for an asymmetric look, so just on one side. So I've cut this out of EVA foam, dead easy to work, and it just sticks on the same as any other greebly. What are we going to use as glue? You can use hot glue, contact adhesive, there are lots and lots of different glues, but because this is a plastic toy and I'm using mixed media, I'm just going to go for good old-fashioned Yoo-Hoo or Bostik or something like that. A simple, ready-to-use tube glue. So there we have the greeblies in place, just letting the glue dry before we mask and seal. Now I've used a little bit of masking tape into the eyes and over this temperature gauge that I put on. That's a little working thermometer in there. I don't want to get paint on those areas. I want to be able to see through the glass. So masking tape covers that off, and it doesn't matter when I'm spraying. I can be a bit more casual with the spraying. What am I going to spray it with? Well, I swear by this stuff. This is Seal Prime. It's in a rattle can. It's from the nice guys at Polyprops. It's a plastic formula sealant. It's flexible. It adheres well to most surfaces, and it gives a good painting surface. It comes in 3 colours, I think: black, white and grey. Black's brilliant if you're doing metallics for SteamPunk and things like that. If you want really bright colours, so bright golds and stuff, then you seal and undercoat in white. It's one step, seal and undercoat, but it is a professional product. So if you use this, nice well ventilated area, and use some PPE. So there we've got the helmet, greeblies all on, all painted in black, sealed, ready for the proper paint job. Now a shortcut is to use another rattle can to give a base colour. When it comes to sprays like that, you can't beat Wilkinson's. Wilkinson's is cheap. These are around a £5, and the quality is spot on. Their lacquer, which I'll come back to, is awesome. So Wilco spray colour, in this case metallic gold, but you don't want to do it thick. You just want to hold the can back and dust it so you've got a textured finish. That textured finish allows you to put the detail on by hand, but it also means that you've not got a flat solid colour, so if you miss anywhere it still works with the overall look. So I'm standing further back and just dusting lightly. You see, I'm not doing a flat colour, and what this does, what this achieves, is a textured paint finish where you're showing off the specks, the flecks of metal within the paint. You can go heavier if you want. On the front here, going a bit heavier, a bit flatter, but what I'm not trying to do is just paint the whole thing a flat gold, because texture works. Texture is always the secret, especially when you're looking at something that's going to be seen on camera. Now, if I want to be lazy, I could leave it there. That's quite a passable SteamPunk helmet already, but I want to go for more of a movie finish, so hand paint next. Painting time. Now I'm using just ordinary artists acrylics. These are cheap ones from the works. You know, you don't have to spend a lot of money, but they work really well. Now when we're doing stuff for television and film, you don't want anything to look too pristine and flat. The more texture and patina and art, in effect, that you put into it, the better it looks on camera. So what I'm doing is I'm starting going in with black, just straight black, to create shadows or emphasize the shadows that are already there within the structure. This is the same sort of technique you might use on miniatures and things like that. So wherever I'm going to want shadow, I'm going to put it in just using the black paint, and this is creating texture and depth. Now there's a simple rule to this sort of task, which is odd numbers. If you want a finished object to be a particular colour, that's actually the mid colour. That's the middle of your range of colours that you're using. So if I want this to be gold, I need that to be my mid colour. But I can have shadow and highlight, one darker and one lighter than that mid colour, and shadow and highlight enhances this texture. As you can see, even as I'm working now, it's bringing out depth on the piece. And as I say, it's a rule of odd numbers. So that is, for each shade that you use as shadow, you use one the other side as highlight. So if you use 2 shadow shades, if you've got more time, you use 2 highlight shades. If you can got even more time, 3 and 3. So it's 7 colours. So that's all it takes really, just to, if you stick by that as a rule of thumb, and you're creating these shadows, so you don't have to be too delicate with it, just slap it in there. Then you begin to create a textured, workable shape. Now that's shadow. Opposite to shadow, I suppose, is shine. So I'm going to start to do some lifting colours the other way. And you see how we've already started to bring some depth in there just by playing with some black. Right, let's speed this all up. The final stage on putting shine on all of this is this stuff, Rub and Buff. This is a wax with a tint in it, and it was developed for things like antique picture frames and stuff like that. I'm using 2 shades. I've got European Gold and Gold Leaf. So European Gold is a little darker, and the Gold Leaf is my final highlight. Now you can just put it on with a brush or with a cloth, and I like to stipple it on a little bit, and it can go on quite thick because being a wax, the trick to it is not the rub, it's the buff, it's the polishing afterwards. So you can polish this with a soft cloth afterwards to get your final shiny finish. One word of caution, it's wax. If you've got anything that you want to stick on after this stage, you know, metal greeblies or something like that, you're stuffed because it won't stick to the wax. So don't put this on anywhere where you're going to want to put a glue or anything like that on over the top, because it's going to make life miserable for you. So can you see how shiny this is getting already? And that's without any major polishing. This is like your final highlight to get that light reflecting kick that you want. One stage I didn't mention earlier, after I'd done the gold coat, I wanted a tiny bit more lift on these pipes here. I wanted them to get bright silver for contrast, so I used a chrome paint there. I think it was a Rust-Oleum brand I used, and the trick with that stuff and those sort of really high shine bright finish paints is it has to be 2 or 3 coats and quite thick, because the surface is self-leveling and you get that really shiny finish. So there's your final highlight going in. So I use that just on the pipes to make them pop a little bit, just the same way as this gold rub and buff is creating some final pop everywhere else. There we go. Time for some final finishing touches of greeblies. In this case I'll be using metal greeblies that, being metal, I didn't want to paint, and a bit of sealant, some lacquer, get rid of the masking, and we're done. Here we have the finished piece. I've added a few little metal details on there, some sockets for pipes, baskets for the eyes. I gave it a coat of sealant. In this case I used Valor from Polyprops. An alternative, and one I love using, is Wilkinson's lacquer, which is a high gloss finish if I wanted that. And it's ready to rock. It was a simple project. This was just using a toy and SteamPunk here. You can all do that, dead easy, just play around. This is going to go on, and we're building the rest of the suit, we're putting it in a sarcophagus, and it'll be a display piece. But we wanted to use it as an example of how a simple child's play thing can become the basis of an art piece. So good luck with your projects, happy making, and we'll see you at the next SteamPunk event.
So there we go. That was a fantastic tutorial there from Major Tinker, man from the Ministry of SteamPunk. Brilliant. Watching that, I mean, I've been in this game for quite a long time, and I still learned quite a bit from watching that about painting techniques and making techniques. Major Tinker's had many years of building props for the film and TV industry, so he knows what he's talking about. I thank him very much for that. It was brilliant. Next up, we have a great virtual walkthrough, really, of a Victorian TinType photography. So I'm going to show that now. Enjoy.
My name's Greg. I'm from Darkbox Images, and today we're going to do kind of a virtual TinType experience. So we're here in my studio in Falkirk, and we're just about to make a plate. So we've got my daughter Charlie, who's already posed and ready to go. There we go. So we're going to put Charlie in this head brace here, and this head brace is going to keep her from moving for a 9-second exposure. Lights are pretty bright, but what she's going to do is she's going to close her eyes and then look at the light with her eyes closed, and that is going to help her eyes get used to the light. And we're just going to go through this process. This is going to be as close to real time as I can make it within reason. So, this process is called wet plate collodion. It was invented in 1850 by a guy named Frederick Scott Archer. Archer was a sculptor, not a photographer. He was trying to figure out a better way to take photographs of his sculpture work. He was using the paper negative calotype process, and he hated it. It took way too long. It didn't have a lot of detail. It didn't work for him. So, being the enterprising Victorian gentleman that he was, he decided to make his own. So, there we go. Perfect. Now, the first step is we're going to coat this tin plate with collodion. Collodion is a nitrocellulose gun cotton dissolved in ether and a few other things. And it's what's going to create the emulsion for our photograph today. So we're going to just tilt down to here. And we're just going to let this flow onto this plate. Collodion used to be used in battlefield medicine. It's still used in some parts of the medical industry today. Let the excess drip off. And we're gonna soak this plate in silver nitrate. And what that's going to do is that's going to soak into the collodion layer and make it light sensitive. So, there we go. Fantastic. And we are going to let that soak for 4 minutes. And that's going to be just enough time for me to tell you a little bit about the Victorians and their experience with photography. Now, the Victorians were the very first people to have photography. And to really understand what this means, you have to imagine yourself in a world before photographs, where anything that you wanted to see, you had to physically be there, or you were looking at a painting or a drawing or some kind of etching. And this was a revelation to the Victorians. In fact, one of the things they loved to do with the photography they'd fallen in love with so quickly was to take photographs of each other. And they did this a lot. So when you look at these large Victorian family portraits, if you look for the person in the very center, that's usually the dead one. They took a lot of these family photographs at funerals. And what would happen is the person would pass and they would be laid in state in what they called the living room. This was a room just off the front entrance of the house. It was only ever used for this purpose. The body would lay in state for 3 to 7 days, giving the family time to show up, and everyone would gather in the living room. The deceased would be placed in a chair, and this photograph would be taken. Now, to our modern sensibilities, this could seem a little bit macabre and weird, but if you look at it from the perspective of the Victorians, this person's last act on this planet is to be surrounded by their friends, their loved ones, having this moment frozen in time and made immortal. And I think this idea of the immortal portrait is what really captivated the Victorians. They had such a complicated relationship with mortality anyway, but having all of these moments frozen in time really, I think, helped them gain a sense of closure. And it was this reason that the Victorian family photo album was the most valued possession in the home. It was the one place where the entire family would always be together, forever, immortal. And that's one of my favorite things about the Victorians, is that they were so complicated as people. And to reduce them down to a few stereotypes is really disingenuous, I think. And one of the stereotypes that we often have is that the Victorians all dressed in very dark colors and very drab colors. Well, that was exactly not true. The opposite was true, in fact. They dressed in bright, garish colors. This photographic process, this wet collodion process, is orthochromatic, meaning it only sees one segment of the spectrum, in this case blue and ultraviolet. These colors glow and become very light, so people with blue eyes, their eyes will glow. The other side of this is that anything red, orange, yellow, and green will tend to go very, very dark. And so when we see photographs of the Victorians, it often looks like they're all wearing dark or charcoal gray or black. This is because this photographic process renders those colors very dark. So that's one of my favorite stories about this photographic process, among others. And what we're going to do now is we're just about ready to take this plate. So Charlie's outside and in her all posed up in the head brace, ready to go. I'm going to put on the safe lights, and then we're going to load this plate and take this picture. There you go. Just gonna... Okay. Now, plate's been in here for 4 minutes. I'm going to pull it out of the silver bath. We're going to let as much of that silver, excess silver, drip off as possible. It's quite expensive. There we go. We're going to wipe off the back. We wipe off the back so that the silver on the back doesn't seep around to the front and cause oysters. It's the gray bits around the edge. So, I'm going to load this plate into the plate holder. And here we go. Okay, so Charlie, we're just going to check focus one more time.
Okay.
Okay. Good, perfect. Hold that. Don't move. And timer. Timer. Okay, here we go. Ready? And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Fantastic. Well done.
Can I move?
Okay. Yep, you can move. And now,
Still almost went with me.
now we're going to go and develop this plate. Now we're ready to develop the plates. So we're going to pour some water. And we're going to pour some developer. Not too much. Okay. We're going to develop this plate for 15 seconds. So here we go. Ready? And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. may already be able to see this image just a bit. So let's go out to the fixer tank and see the magic bit. So as you can see, watch out. As you can see, it's blue and it's kind of a negative. So we're going to place it into the fixer, and magically it just shows right up. This is my absolute favorite part of the process. This is there's a reason I call it the magic bit. It's so brilliant. I never get tired of seeing it. So these blue bits around the edge are where the collodion's the thickest, and we're going to wait for that to clear, and then that's our image all fixed. Isn't that fantastic? And we're going to let that sit in the rinse for about 15-20 minutes, and then we're going to wax it. Oh, excellent work. You did a good job.
Yay!
Okay, so it's about 15 minutes later. The plates have sufficiently dried, and now we're going to wax them. This is the final process. This is called Renaissance wax. It's a microcrystalline wax polish developed specifically for the British Museum. And we're going to wax that. And this is going to protect the very delicate collodion layer from things like fingerprints and oil and dust. I'm doing my best Mr. Miyagi here. Wax on, wax off. There we go. It's buffing out nicely. You want to wait until your plate is completely dry to do this, or else you risk taking off the image. But there it is. Look at that.
So there we go. Fabulous demonstration there from Gregg MacNeill of Darkbox Images. Do go check out his website and support him on Patreon. He has a Patreon page, so do check that out. I'm sure we can find those links for you and put them in the comments. But I've seen that video a few times now, and I'm still blown away by the way the image gets revealed. Even though, like I say, I've seen it 2 or 3 times. It's just truly magical, And he's taken some amazing pictures. I don't know whether you saw my interview. I did an interview with him about a week or so ago. Be on the SteamPunk page still, but go check that out because there's some amazing images. He did a fantastic image of Mr. B, which is one of my favourite images of Mr. B, and of Dr. Jeff as well. So yeah, do check out Gregg MacNeill of Darkbox Images. Amazing. I'm just looking at my schedule here. We're going to take another break, and we're going to be back for something very exciting. I have to say, very exciting, because at 3 o'clock It's time for gin. It's time for gin, and we're going to do something very special for you. Which we're trying new things out all the time this weekend. We've not really done any of this before. I know it shows, but and we're going to be doing cooking with gin live with Lady M. Yeah, from our kitchen, from our very kitchen. Yeah, down in the west wing of the mansion, and so that's going to be quite interesting and cool. And then that'll be followed by the history of gin, presented by Kate Viggers of History's Made. Sorry, I got that wrong. Malika's saying she's in the east wing today. Oh, right, I better go and track her down there then, I suppose. Oh, it's just such a long walk. Anyway, so we'll be, but don't miss us back at 3 for gin. And then later on at 4, we'll be doing all sorts of things with comics. We're going all kind of literary and arty at 4. But 3 o'clock, meet us back here on the SteamPunk page for Cooking with Gin. Thank you. Stay safe. Stay splendid.